My name is Bill Mayer. I'm the executive for Research Services, and I'm grateful to the archivist and Mr. Rubenstein for their obvious support and love for the work that happens here at the National Archives. I would like to welcome you to what I think of as your house, and to start out this day of discussion on preservation, I want to reflect on a couple of things that happen within the world of research services and why preservation is so important. You know, it's true, preservation begins at home, and that fact came large to me as a young boy, particularly when I was getting my driver's license, because it turned out for many years growing up, I had been told my birthday was November 29th. And so when I went to get my learner's permit at 14, because I lived in LA, they start them young there, I went up, did everything I needed to do, and got to get my license. And they said, well, you need your birth date. And so we found my birth certificate, which had November 28th on it. And the whole world started to shift a little bit because, like, well, wait a minute, what's this all mean? And my mother's like, that can't be right, you know, but here was the birth certificate. So thus started this journey of mine of an identity crisis of just huge proportions. So I accessed to the government, you know, the man, and said, all right, it's the 28th, but I know in my heart it's the 29th, and it'll always be the 29th. We went and we talked to the Santa Monica County Records Officer and got a new birth certificate, and it said November 28th. I'm like, but no, it can't be. My mother called my grandparents, who were theoretically there when I was born, and they all said, no, it's the 29th, it's fine. Now, I was the youngest of a family of 5. And in fact, by the time you go through that, you have people who have the first child's birthday book, which is stuffed full of clippings, and every little Jimmy had a bowel movement today, and with all this stuff. And then by the time it got to little Billy, here's this pristine little birthday book all still wrapped up. And so you realize that perhaps people weren't paying as much attention. So, I live with this identity crisis. A few years back, my folks were changing residences. And there was this major event of the family coming together to work on distributing artifacts across the country. Big family, so we had things, my folks really just wanted to be lean, and they're forward-looking people, so they don't really look in the rearview mirror much. And during this time, now I'd been living with this lie that my birthday, by the government standards, was November 28th, but I knew it was November 29th. So we're going through all these things, and I come across a box of documents. And in that box of documents, I found the birth announcement for me. And it was perfect because apparently they actually didn't send them out. But you can imagine, and it was because it was a box that no one had actually opened, there it was, and here was my birth announcement, November 28th. And there's a cinematic moment where I'm spinning around and the camera's going, no, and it was this whole identity crisis thing. So that's a way of introducing the concept that preservation begins at home. And I live with that, but it's okay, we move on. But in research services, the landscape is a little bit more nuanced and complex because think about it, in my story, I talked about how no one seemed to know, and we were just going on verbal history, but no one actually thought to go look in the box. I mean, it's a little bit like Schrodinger's cat. If you don't want to know, don't look in the box. Same thing with preservation. Sometimes if you need to preserve something, you leave it alone, because if you open the box, the information is lost. Great challenge for preservationists. But then how do you weave in access? And I think that's always a question. How does access and preservation work together? And in research services at the National Archives, we're involved in 4 key areas: bringing in the records so that we can deal with them, facilitating discovery of those records, and of course, once you find something, the very natural instinct is to get access to it like you want it. But underneath all that lies preservation. And so the big debate that's been going on, I mean, I'm a professional, I'm an information professional. Yes, some might call me a librarian. That's what I was doing before I came to the National Archives. But facilitating access to information is the game that I'm in. And it's the game that all of you are in, because that's why you're here. That gentle cycle of where does preservation begin to facilitate access, and where does access begin to bring in concerns of preservation is very much at the heart of the work that we do every day. So as we go through today's conference, the issues that I really want to challenge you with, that you'll hear from our speakers, is how do we manage this cycle? How do we manage this inherent conflict between access and preservation? You know, how do we take this awesome responsibility of stewarding the records of the Republic and making them accessible? Maybe we don't need to build cases that have an exquisite blend of argon gas and other types of things like the Magna Carta, but at the same time, we have to think about how do we provide access to that information? Because ultimately, I believe that's the goal of preservation, to ensure that content is usable over time. So whether you think it begins at the beginning of the access cycle or at the end, doesn't so much matter to me. What matters is that we do it, and we do it extremely well. So to hear about the ideas of preservation, it's my great pleasure to introduce Doris Hamburg, who's the Director of Preservation Programs at the National Archives. Doris has agency-wide responsibility for developing and implementing policy and programs to ensure the preservation and access to the 4 million cubic feet of permanent federal paper, photographic, audio, video, and film records, narrow electronic records, and 600,000 artifacts held at 28 archives and presidential libraries across the United States continues. Prior to the National Archives, Ms. Hamburg worked in several preservation positions at the Library of Congress. Ms. Hamburg holds an A.B. degree in medieval studies, a master's in art history, and an M.S. and certificate in conservation of art and historic artifacts, and a certificate in museum studies. Now, I'll ask you from housekeeping, hold your insightful comments till after Doris's talk. We have microphones on either side, as you see, for questions and answers. The goal today is to generate dialogue and discussion. And I can think of no one better to start us off than Doris Hamburg. Doris, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you very much, Bill. We were off to a great beginning here. I actually, seeing this beautiful picture and poster, I wanted to tell you about one thing about the National Archives holdings. There, if you took every box that we have in our permanent collection, you could go to the moon and back 3 times. That gives you a little perspective on the size of our holdings here. My goal today is to offer some observations on where we are and where we need to go with preservation of archives, but of cultural property more generally. Now, it would be really helpful if I had a crystal ball as we try and figure this out, but I don't really know how to use one, and I missed how to learn, missed on that. So I'll pretend I'm a soothsayer. And in any case, though, time will tell where the future takes us. But the paths we take will have great consequences for the future. In preparing this paper, I was assisted by discussions at the National Archives that included about 40 NARA staff across the agency who work in archival positions, preservation, IT, and other positions. And I'm very grateful to them for their insights that provided the foundation for my remarks. And I'm also thankful to and appreciative to my superb editor colleagues, and as most particularly to the conference organizing committee for setting up those talks, and particularly for developing this very interesting and timely conference and taking care of every detail so expertly. I really appreciate the good work of the conference committee and actually the whole staff of preservation programs at the National Archives. Museums, historical societies, libraries, and archives collect to ensure that their collections will be available, as Bill said, for use by society today and in the future. The demands for access are increasing exponentially and potentially are tied to the relevancy of the institution unless we can meet those demands. We recognize that major economic, environmental, and social changes affect all aspects of our lives and work, and that all the pundits are saying this speed of change will continue. How do some of these and other influences affect the effort to preserve our collections so that they will be available now and over time? The modern discipline of preservation is fairly young, but preservation of things goes back thousands of years. We take great pleasure and learn from art, structures, documents, and other cultural property in the past that they have been preserved, whether they were preserved intentionally or not. The Egyptians believed that the soul left the body and that it was important to preserve the physical body so that the soul and body could be reunited in the afterlife. And we have mummies from various cultures that have survived for thousands of years. 2,000 years ago, a community put their writings in caves by the Dead Sea so they would be kept safe. Now, it's unlikely that they expected those manuscripts would remain there until the mid-20th century, at which time the world was astonished and thrilled to find the treasures that we now call the Dead Sea Scrolls, that provide insights into the Second Temple period of Judaism and the birth of Christianity. Interest in preserving can be found centuries back, including 6th century text comments on the desirability of using papyrus because of its durability. Medieval monks copied manuscripts in scriptoria with the same intent as modern-day reformatting for preservation and access. Separated, of course, by centuries and many changes in technology, we can think of the monks' work as the precursor to digitization. Early restorers trained to address damage to the visual appearance of a document or artwork were often highly skilled craftsmen. Philip Ward, in his book, The Nature of Conservation, A Race Against Time, talks about early restorers as, quote, having a philosophy quite different from that of modern conservators, unquote. In the 1930s and 40s in Europe and in the United States, studies on the causes of deterioration began, and in sharing that knowledge with restorers, the research came to be applied to the care of collections. The seminal publication by H.J. Plenderleith in the 1950s brought forward this work. Ward explained that, quote, combining the knowledge of material science and with the skills and traditional wisdom of restoration shaped the new discipline of conservation, end quote. This was a watershed moment that changed historical approaches to modern preservation philosophy that focused on protecting collections from damage. In a museum, archives, or other cultural repository, preservation partners with the custodians of the collections in order to achieve access to the collection while minimizing burdens on its preservation. Today, in thinking about the future, we have an opportunity and a need to focus our goals in terms of sustainability. We want to focus on optimization rather than maximization. At NARA, we talk about our key preservation strategies, which must work together in an integrated fashion to achieve a successful preservation program. Success is also dependent on collaboration and involvement by staff and at all levels and in working in most of the functions of the agency. Each of these strategies must also be understood in terms of how the strategy provides for sustainability. We can think of our work in terms of looking through 4 lenses. We need to look at economic sustainability, environmental sustainability, community sustainability, and collection sustainability. There is a dynamic tension among these, and it can spur us to great creativity and success in addressing the challenges and in achieving our mission. The website Wise Geek explains economic sustainability as, quote, the term used to identify various strategies that make it possible to utilize available resources to best advantage. The idea is to promote usage of those resources that is both efficient and responsible and likely to provide long-term benefits, end quote. As we know, the economic climate around the world is uncertain and resources are strained as we look to the future. The demands for providing services and new technology increase, as do the size and complexity of our holdings. Our ideas and opportunities for providing access to the holdings are ever increasing. The concept of economic sustainability applies across an institution, including in the area of collection preservation. Being responsible about costs is hardly a new activity or concept, but we are in times of more significant economic limitations, requiring us to redouble our efforts to streamline our processes, question our assumptions, and identify what the most important priorities are. I'm referring not just to cost cutting, but also to determining where best to invest on behalf of our goals. In making any changes, we need to consider the impact on the immediate issue, but also the implications on other functions and goals. We need to ensure that we can operate our infrastructure and need to understand and balance sustainably both capital costs as well as long-term operating costs. A recent small-scale example related to economic sustainability it's a small example, but it's illustrative of how small changes can make a difference. Our conservation staff developed, devised and implemented corrugated board inserts made from box-making scraps that can be placed in older boxes that have a type of design that would lead to records damage. And now, as a result of using that simple card, we're able to use fewer boxes at the National, we need to replace fewer boxes at the National Archives, and that reduced staff time also for reboxing and labeling. I want to also applaud the staff member who took the time to see a long time process of changing these boxes with fresh eyes and creativity, and for asking questions that then led to a change. An example on a larger and higher tech scale, building a new facility with the type of walls, roof, and construction that minimize loss of conditioned air will have initial investment costs, but over time will save on energy and enhance our ability to meet the mission and achieve the most preservation benefit for our investment. At a minimum, a broad cost-benefit analysis is needed when we embark on such a project, and many other projects as well. Balance continues to be needed among cost, time, and quality. We seek solutions that are suitable for the given purpose. For example, the preservation solutions are not and shouldn't be the same for the Declaration of Independence as for my father's citizenship application, even though in my view, they both should be kept permanently. And clearly birth certificates should be kept permanently. From an economic perspective, as a collecting institution, we have the requirement to maintain the collections, which are our assets. Without them, we have nothing to offer our customers. In some cases, the time frame for knowing we have failed to preserve is quite short, especially when access to information is dependent on obsolete equipment or software. But more often, the indication of success will only become clear well into the future. Our ability to evaluate today that we are being successful in preserving stems on our having an integrated, multifaceted program. If in the future I do wonder sometimes how we will be remembered. And if time traveling actually comes to be, well, then we will be able to look at how we did way back now. We can't be sustainable without all four sustainable realms, fully integrated into operations and decision-making. One of the largest challenges to sustainability in meeting our missions is seeing these four realms as distinct rather than as one integrated challenge. In thinking about environmental sustainability, The Earth's climate is changing, and we can't rely on old assumptions and knowledge about its impact on culture, nature, communities, and people, as well as the built structures and collections they are designed to protect. We must check and recheck the evolving threats to and the needs of our collections. For example, are there changes in our area in the frequency and severity of floods, hurricanes, rain, or earthquakes? Are we assessing risks and preparing for emergencies and potential disasters? As ice caps melt and the oceans get warmer, water levels rise, and they are rising. During the 20th century, the sea level rose an average of 7 inches, after 2,000 years of relatively little change. The 2007 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change conservatively predicted that sea levels could rise 10 to 23 inches by the year 2010 if current warming patterns continue. And more recent estimates far exceed those levels. In the United States, roughly 100 million people live in coastal areas. Low-lying cities such as Boston, Miami, and New York are vulnerable, and the impact to cultural property could be devastating. Energy costs continue to rise, and there is a need to minimize energy usage, both for budgetary reasons and to minimize the impact on nature, our communities, and more broadly. Based on the research of our preservation scientists at NARA, our growing knowledge of materials and their deterioration, as well as the work of scientists elsewhere around the world, NARA preservation staff has made several recommendations to our facility staff for reducing energy usage while maintaining the quality and, in some cases, improving storage for our records. It is the dialogue, the ongoing communication, and application of expertise that leads to success. Working together, facilities and preservation staff have been able to achieve significant cost-saving results. This type of discussion and communication are essential both in developing new facilities and making changes to existing facilities. Long ago, we passed the era when providing one number or one set point for temperature and one for relative humidity will achieve a sustainable preservation environment for the collections. Some of the matters to discuss include how much energy will be needed to maintain the building. Is there a way to achieve the goals passively? Does building design or construction encourage risks from water weather or other threats to collections? For certain more stable collections, materials research has shown there is more flexibility in temperature and relative humidity conditions than was understood previously. We want to think in terms of today's needs as well as the future in addressing requirements of collection items in our care. Are we prepared, for example, to sustainably achieve our needs when the power is out for extended periods of time? The great strides in understanding materials, how they deteriorate, and strategies for preservation need to continue in order to create sustainability in energy, economics, and collections. We have already yielded significant benefits in saving energy and financial resources, while also benefiting holdings. Research in yet another area of the environmental picture and complex deterioration mechanisms relates to the role of pollutants such as acetic acid, sulfur dioxide, nitric oxides, and others. Work is underway at the National Archives and at other institutions, and we hope that this research will further benefit energy savings. In June 2010, futurist Gerd Leonhard advised the travel industry that climate change will impact travel in the future, likely reducing the amount of travel due to costs and the impact on the environment. He suggested that the costs to address environmental changes caused by travel would become part of the upfront costs borne by the traveler, rather than the lagging costs paid by the community where the changes occur. This may well have an impact for our institutions as they work to provide access in the future, and on travel by visitors and researchers, or in shipping research collections. It's important to recognize that what we do has impact beyond ourselves, both on the micro and macro levels. We want to avoid environmental impact that affects the local and broader ecology and community. NARA facilities staff have been active in identifying opportunities to lessen the impact of our headquarters in College Park on the environment through passive solar collectors, rainwater collection, a partial green roof, and other initiatives. Recycling and reducing impact on the environment applies to bottles from soda machines, but it also applies to reutilization of structures, materials, and furniture where possible. In thinking about community sustainability, next, in ensuring relevancy, we want to know what our customers and stakeholders want and how we can best serve them. Other aspects of community to be sustained exist within our institutions and our professional communities. Providing access online to collections is a key element of community sustainability and an expectation of our customers. Again, Gerrit Leonhardt predicted that by 2020, 75% of online access will be on mobile devices. Many millennials would rather read and text online than in hard copy. It's the ease and complete integration of the web into daily life, rather than memory loss, that makes it difficult for me to remember what researching was like before the web existed. Cultural collections offer many opportunities for bringing people together, virtually and directly. Crowdsourcing, peer-to-peer social networks, and gamification, a new word for me, provided some of the options that support community sustainability. These and the more traditional access points provide opportunities to promote preservation of cultural heritage in general and of particular collections more specifically. And permitting broad access, digitization is a critical initiative for an institution. Making collections available online has added preservation benefits of reducing handling of original records, in our case. Accomplishing the digitization of our collections call for collaboration among curators and archivists to select collections, to understand, to know their intellectual meaning, to provide key metadata. Conservators are part of this call and collaboration as they enable access to all the information and safe handling of the originals. Imaging specialists and technicians do image capture. Information technology specialists ensure the data is managed and preserved. And online media specialists deliver the digital content. And working together, this is how we can make this happen. In the archives, and as in most other collecting institutions, preservation activities permeate the work of the archives. From creation of the records, accessioning, discovering their intellectual content, and storing them, and providing access, these various activities are interconnected in multiple directions. Communication and ongoing management support throughout the institution's community and ensures the sustainability of the community involvement and commitment. It will be ever more important that preservation is not perceived as an activity that is performed by a group behind a door off to the side. The most successful programs will intertwine preservation and archival functions into a seamless whole that provides records and information to the public in a variety of ways. Preservation staff have the responsibility to learn about and also support the work of ingest, discovery, and access, contributing through their expertise in preservation, as must those whose primary care are ingest, discovery, and access will want to grow their knowledge of preservation to align the multiple functions and goals. The interdisciplinary approach that includes other institutional functions as well results in the best and most cost-effective decision making in the institution in all areas. During my career, I've observed that assigning preservation staff the role of being the conscience of an institution or for the institution can lead to the situation that others reduce their focus on long-term responsibility to the preservation, that can lead to the situation that others reduce their focus on the long-term responsibility to the preservation mission. Success is achieved if everyone takes responsibility for the long term, as well as the short-term impact of institutions' efforts. Preservation provides the expertise and guidance to know how to achieve collection preservation and to support the access mission. Few situations are black and white, but with each function bringing its specialized expertise to the table at the start, working with a shared vision, it's possible to achieve desired results. All learn with the benefit to the whole. In striving for community sustainability, we need to maintain a skilled preservation staff with qualifications that are commensurate with the needs. Meg Kraft, who is the president of the American Institute for Conservation, recently reported that the number of conservators in private practice is increasing because of the lack of jobs in cultural institutions. Yet, preventive conservation is really only possible and effective, is really only effective when conservation staff has the necessary daily contact with collections. One avenue for developing a qualified future workforce is through postgraduate fellowships that provide opportunities for conservation and preservation program graduates. Thinking about collection sustainability, there's no one single solution. We have seen over the 20th century efforts to find the one-shot, perfect preservation solution. Lamination, silking, there are others, only to recognize later that one approach can't do it all. At NARA, we employ multiple but integrated preservation strategies in 4 areas: accountability, prevention, remediation, and leadership. To be accountable, we set standards for preservation care, and we participate in planning and implementation. And as with any important function, we monitor our progress. We can limit deterioration by controlling its causes. We get a lot of bang for the buck by providing good storage environment and building design, safe housing, training on handling, and thoughtful emergency preparedness, to name a few of the strategies. Remediation refers to the intervention at the item, record level, or across groups of holdings to remediate damage and enhance and extend access. These actions include conservation treatment and preservation reformatting to capture information. While preservation is everyone's mission at the National Archives, a preservation program can provide leadership and guidance for the creation of records and formats that will ensure their sustainability. The whole area of collection sustainability is the last of the sustainability areas and raises some interesting questions and challenges for preservation. What do we save, for how long, in what formats? We must continue to have thoughtful and tough discussions about priorities for applying our resources. Usually we use a combination of these considerations, looking at holdings with the greatest damage, of greatest importance, in highest use, or at most risk. But given limited resources, we must hone our decision-making capability. For example, will there be sufficient resources to reformat the old and obsolete and deteriorated audio-video material before its lost? What will be of research interest in the future? For some unknown reason, certain climate data documenting climate in the late 19th century no longer survives, though earlier data and later data are available for use. The absence of the late 19th century data leaves a major gap for researchers in climate change analysis. In 1996, research in a group of rarely used World War II records at the National Archives uncovered significant clues to Nazi assets dormant in Swiss banks for years. The group of records proved valuable to many thousands of people around the world. And for how long? Archives, libraries, museums, and other cultural institutions have what are typically called permanent collections. Merriam-Webster defines permanent as, quote, continuing or enduring without fundamental or marked change, unquote. What does that mean? 50 years? Or hundreds of years? Or thousands of years? The answer to this question makes a difference in our choice of preservation strategies. Some records are more equal than others. Historical value, research benefit, market value all go into the equation. And in what formats do we keep our records or our collections? In our digital age, a recent book review by Farhad Manjoo, technology writer for Slate, offered his thoughts on digital content and originals. Quote, however compact and abstract art becomes, the physical is always going to matter. Where you held on to your dog-eared copy of The Catcher in the Rye, your kid might store his beat-up first-generation Kindle, because irrational as it seems, that device contains what he felt when first reading J.D. Salinger. We can't escape the real world. To be blunt about it, nothing designed by the world's leading expert on digital books could ever hold a candle to the real thing, end quote. On a personal level, as much as I love to click away with my digital camera and phone and then look at them on the iPad, I worry that digital pictures of my youngest daughter will not be around in 20 or 30 years for her or for her children to enjoy. For me, storing, backing up, creating metadata to know what's what, recopying the digital photos, transferring from one type of media to another, seems like a lot of work and complicated. Maybe by the time my daughter has a child, systems will be completely in place and keeping the digital image, let's assume that's what they're using and my digital images are still there, will be as easy as putting a photo in a box or as easy as putting a photo in a box or an album is for me, at least in a box. From a professional standpoint, I see us in an exciting period of transition as we continue to develop, improve, and address the complex range of issues related to preservation, management, and access of digital files. While the physical medium is, for the most part, no longer a primary consideration with electronic records, the management of ever-growing number of files, their integrity, the authenticity of the bits, and the information they transmit are critical. But no matter the form of our records and no matter the form our records and collections take, digital or physical, their future is tied to sustainability, seen through our lenses of economics, energy, community, and collections. I believe these four considerations can help make us make better decisions. By working together with greater interdisciplinary collaboration, investment in research, and creativity, we will succeed over the long term. The work we do, and that all of you do, is critical to our institutions and our nation's future, and to all our country and the world. I am happy to be here, and I welcome all of you again to the 26th National Archives Annual Preservation Conference. We know that you will hear about some exciting strategies and initiatives today, and we hope that you will gain some new perspectives. And thinking about what David Rubenstein said earlier, it brings to mind a quote from Lily Tomlin. Maybe if people started to listen, history would stop repeating itself. Thank you.